Welcome to Autism Knows No Borders, a podcast where people connected to autism inspire change and build community. Together with the Global Autism Project, I'm your host, Rachel Harmon, a professional with over a decade of experience in the field of autism services, outreach, and advocacy. Do you find it difficult to develop authentic relationships? This episode is part 2 of my conversation with Paul Micallef. He talks about the importance of listening and self-awareness when managing relationships. Among other things, we discuss why it's important to teach emotional intelligence, navigating neurodivergent relationships, disclosing your autism versus keeping it private, the need to change people's perceptions about autism, the double empathy problem, and tips for autistic people who are struggling to build relationships. In this episode, discover what's possible when you dare to be self-aware. And now I present you Paul Micallef. You mentioned that you offer a course on emotional intelligence, which is autism-friendly. So what are some key strategies that you teach to help others manage their emotions and overcome some of these challenges?
So you may have heard from how I'm talking already that I'm an engineer. I'll probably always be an engineer, even though I haven't worked as one for probably 10 years now. I take a very systematic, structured approach to teaching about emotions. And when we understand the reason behind what's going on, when it's as simple as, well, it's like gravity. If you drop something, it's going to hit the ground. So if you don't want it to hit the ground, don't drop it. Or if you can't help but drop it, then put something between it and the ground so it doesn't break. Suddenly, the more we can understand the dynamics of what's happening, it gives us so many more options as to what to do to get the outcome. So I have an emotional feedback flowchart that clearly outlines some of the emotions and the things that we feel are not within our conscious control. So I'm constantly reacting. Everything I see, everything I think, everything I touch, everything I smell is going to elicit some kind of involuntary reaction from me that is usually so small you don't even notice that it's happening. But recognizing that means that it helps with the self-awareness so that I can see what can I do. It might be leaving a situation. It might be thinking happy thoughts. That's a strategy that works sometimes, not all the time. It might be deliberately remembering something. It might be talking to myself. But whatever the strategy is, I need to know when and how to use it. So lots of step-by-step strategies of this is how to manage an emotion. First, you notice the emotion. Then you regulate yourself and basically just step by step through all that kind of stuff.
Okay, great. And you also offer relationship coaching for autistic individuals or people who are in a relationship with someone on the spectrum. Now, is this specific to romantic relationships or just any relationship in general?
So the most common client that I have is someone who is in a relationship with an autistic person and is trying to understand the other person better. So that's probably the most common, because my autistic clients tend to have many different life coaching goals. So it's life coaching, which can sometimes be relationship coaching. So that might be, I want to be more assertive at work. It might be, I want to develop my social life. It might be, I want to communicate better with my partner. So whatever that is, life coaching picks a goal, something that you want to make better in your life, and then we clarify what you want and explore it a bit more and figure out some actionable steps to get you a little bit closer to that goal. I'll just say a little bit more about the relationship coaching. The understanding of autism makes a huge difference, especially in an intimate relationship, because when someone responds in a different way than you're expecting, it's easy to think that there's like a hidden meaning behind what they're doing, and to internalize, well, if if they didn't put the dishes away, it must mean they don't love me. That's an extreme example of a very small thing and a very big result. But these kind of miscommunications can have a huge impact on especially an intimate relationship. And just getting a sense of what the other person is going through helps us to come back on the same page and come back as a team on that.
Mm-hmm. Do you sometimes work with both people?
Occasionally.
Okay.
It's usually one of the couple rather than both. It's fantastic when both are on board and both come to the session, but the other partner is not always keen. So I very often have this advice for people that even if your partner isn't on board, there's still a lot that you can do on your side of the relationship that will make, number one, you feel a lot better, and number two, help the other person to succeed as well, and therefore make the whole relationship a significant amount better.
Yeah. And these are tips that can be applied to not just autistic people, but anyone really.
There is a huge overlap between the emotional intelligence and the life coaching, because really we're learning to listen to ourselves first, which requires emotional intelligence, and then communication skills relies on listening to other people, and that again, everything relies on emotional intelligence in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Are you in a relationship yourself?
Yes, I've been married for a bit over 2 years now.
Is your partner autistic?
She has ADHD, so related, but not autistic.
Okay. Do you think the work that you've been doing over the years has helped you have a strong relationship?
Definitely, definitely. The amount of work that is required to make a neurodivergent relationship work is more than average. When two people who are more or less similar come together, and that you don't always have to think about what to do. It's a little bit like a cross-cultural kind of situation where it's going to take me a lot more work if I go to China or Russia or Egypt or something where there's more difference, and especially a lot more unconscious difference between how I think and how I communicate with the people around me. So if I'm going to have success in building relationships cross-culturally, I need to really take a look at myself and my own assumptions as to what I think, quote unquote, should be the right way to do a relationship. And it really helps to take all of those issues really seriously.
Yeah, definitely. So, with doing a lot of this work and developing that self-awareness, I imagine, you prepare yourself when you're interacting with other people, but are there any ways that you feel misunderstood from people who might judge you?
All the time. Basically, because my outward appearance changes so much depending on the situation. So, a group situation, especially a group situation where I don't know the others very well, they're kind of acquaintances, that's really challenging. What I would have done in the past is mask, essentially. I would have put on a more outgoing persona so that I could talk to people and interact with people. Because if I don't do that, I'm just sitting there, and when people talk to me, I don't respond. That's not a great way to make friends in a group, to ignore people when they talk to you and not respond. Whereas if I am in a different situation where it's more one-on-one, or we've got something to do or something real to talk about, like a topic or something rather than just small talk, then suddenly I'm a completely different person. I talk a lot. I'm really engaged. I can pay attention to people. I can form really, really strong relationships in that setting. But if you put me in the group setting where I don't know people and I don't have the energy to put on a more outgoing personality, then I really don't like the fact that I will be misunderstood. It's just a fact of life in that situation. People don't haven't seen the other side of me. So there's no way for them to know it exists.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Rachel here. Would you like to share your own perspectives? Join our online global autism community, a safe and judgment-free space where all kinds of people connected to autism regularly discuss important topics like autistic identity, dating on the spectrum, coping strategies, and many, many more. We'd love to see you over at community.globalautismproject.org. And now, back to the conversation. Do you disclose your autism often?
No, not really. Not often. The most common way I disclose my autism is when someone asks, "What do you do?" And I tell them that I teach about autism and emotional intelligence online. And they say, "Oh, cool, that's interesting. How did you get into that?" And it comes up. I don't always disclose it in the story, but it's a very common way for me to tell people that I'm autistic is through that story. There's not many other reasons that I would have to tell people.
Mm-hmm.
I also personally don't think it really helps unless someone has a very good understanding of what autism is, then using that word doesn't help them to understand whatever specific thing I'm trying to explain. So if I'm trying to explain why I'm wearing earplugs at the gym or why I am walking up and down the back of the meeting room instead of sitting down like every other board member, then I will just say something more helpful like, I sit down all day. I get a bit fidgety if I try and sit down. This really helps me think if I walk up and down the back of the room. If I'm walking up like this, it means that I'm listening.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, "Oh, cool. Yeah, I sit down all day as well. That's a really good idea."
Yeah. I see two sides of this because on the one hand, people might attach all the stereotypes when you bring up the word autism and, have these preconceived ideas of what it means and who autistic people are. So I understand you don't want to be misunderstood from that side, but then at the same time, by disclosing that you are autistic, you can even break some of those stereotypes. So then it becomes kind of a learning opportunity for them. But I understand you might not always be in the mood to be teaching someone about autism.
Yeah, definitely socially. The reason I might ignore that part of the story socially is to avoid the situation where I end up educating people in my time that I'm supposed to not be at work.
Right. Yeah.
But there's actually a more deliberate approach to this because I personally feel that people need to have a question before you can give them an answer. So the way it usually plays out with me is people will get to know me. And if I am masking/passing enough, they won't notice anything too different about me in the first little bit. And they'll get to know me a little bit. And then at some point in the relationship, they will realize that I'm autistic. And then it will radically shift what they previously thought about autism. Because their first question would be, "But you don't fit any of the stereotypes that I thought. And you're talking to me and you're making eye contact and you're doing all these other things." And then there'll be a more nuanced learning opportunity to say, "Well, actually, if you were paying attention, I was actually giving you a minimum amount of eye contact, just enough for you to not notice that I'm avoiding it." And if you also notice, I also tend to stand next to you instead of in front of you, which means that we tend to not have to look each other face to face and various other things like that. And they'll go, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting." And so it's a bit more of a nuanced discussion if there's already the relationship there.
Mm-hmm. All right, Paul, let's talk about your YouTube channel and the webinars that you host. You host a virtual series called Autism From The Inside. So tell us about that project.
Yeah. So when I first discovered I was autistic, I did a lot of reading and I opened all the textbooks and I found myself getting really angry at the textbooks because they were describing what you could see on the outside, and they were missing the internal experience. So that's why I started what is now Autism From The Inside. And as that grew, it started with me just sharing my personal experience and being legitimately surprised at how many people could relate to what I thought at the time was a fairly unique thing for me. And then I realized that we really just need so much more of this. We need to hear more autistic voices. We need to hear more of what's going on the inside to help bridge that empathy gap between the neurotypical and autistic communities. Because as I mentioned earlier with the emotional intelligence stuff, the key there is empathy, because we really can understand each other. Autistic behavior seems weird only if you don't know why it's happening, or only if you don't know the person behind it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. We've talked on this podcast before about the double empathy problem. I think it was,
Dr. Damien Milton.
thank you, Damien Milton. Yeah. And we had Tara Vance from Neuroclastic on the show. I don't know if you know her. Her and Kate were describing the double empathy problem being kind of exactly what you're saying, that the gap is actually from neurotypical people not understanding autistic people. And so to kind of flip it on its head and look at how we can solve that.
Yeah, so I'm really passionate about sharing lived experience, especially for parents and teachers and professionals and others who are actively trying to understand their autistic loved ones. And when the penny drops and it actually makes sense at an intuitive level, that is such a different way of learning than reading something in a textbook. Even if you already know what something means, when it really hits you at an intuitive level, and so that you could say, I can see how a person kind of like me might respond like that. We're not so different.
Right. Yeah. So you have a online summit coming up, and it is starting on the 19th, lasts a week long. What are you excited about with this lineup and the theme?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different talks. We have 25 different sessions over the 5 days. Everything from, understanding behavior to adult issues. We've got a whole day dedicated to managing autism in adult life. And with that panel of autistic people in their 70s that I mentioned. And the most rewarding thing for me for putting all of this together is I get to reach out and talk to so many different people from all over the world and hear their story and help them to share not only their personal story and their personal experience, but most of the summit speakers are also professionals in their own right, in their own field. So thankfully, we are getting more and more autistic psychologists and OTs and other people that work with the autistic community on a daily basis. So they're not only sharing just their own personal story, but also what they've learned from working with others in the autistic community.
Great. And it is free to sign up, right?
Yeah, that's right. So it's a completely free 5-day online event. And we try to make it as accessible as possible. So what that means is no matter where you are in the world, you can have access to the on-demand video of that day's speakers. So rather than saying you have to turn up at this exact time, we just pre-recorded it, and then you can just turn up at roughly the right time on the right day and watch it whenever suits you. And there's also an option at the end after the week-long event has finished. If you want to turn the whole resource into, something that you'll come back to and watch it again and again, as some people like to do, then it's possible to purchase lifetime access to the whole thing as well.
Okay, great. That's really a wonderful thing that you're putting together. We'll put a link in our show notes so that people can sign up. I think by the time this podcast is released, the summit will be starting the next week. So there's definitely time to catch up.
Yeah, and I'm constantly surprised again and again by the same thing, which you'd sort of think I would learn by now. But every year it surprises me the kind of feedback we get just by sharing a story. People saying, wow, it was so fantastic to hear you talking about your life and how you experience the world and your personal sensory issues and your personal experience with burnout and your personal experience with how to get a job, or all of these other really, really common things. Because especially for parents and teachers, you can't ask a 5-year-old to explain themselves and exactly what's going on for themselves. So to have the benefit of a couple of extra decades of, self-awareness to help you to understand that is really valuable.
Right, right. Yeah, and even for professionals in the field who want to learn how they can better support their clients, it's a really great resource. Listening directly to autistic voices. It's one of our aims with this podcast. All right, Paul, I'd like to close with one last question. What advice would you give to autistic individuals who are maybe struggling to build these relationships? Where's a good place to start? I mean, other than taking your courses and signing up for coaching.
So I'll share one of the key kind of concepts from the emotional intelligence course, which is that we know that masking is not very healthy because you're putting on a facade that's not really you. And then when you get success with the mask, it's easy to still feel that rejection. Yeah, you only like me because I'm masking. As soon as I take the mask off, you're not going to like what's underneath. So we know that that's not a really good strategy in the long term. We also know that the typical, just be yourself advice doesn't work either. When I'm myself, people don't want to talk to me because it's too weird. So it starts with yourself. It starts with knowing who you are as a person and what you want out of life and out of situations and out of relationships. And then it's about finding a socially appropriate version of your true self. So you want to be a version of yourself that's authentic. Like I am a version of myself today. I am a different version of myself when I'm playing with my niece and nephew. I'm a different version of myself with my wife. I'm a different version of myself when I'm, in Canberra talking to politicians, right? Every different situation brings out different parts of yourself. So making genuine connections is about knowing yourself well enough to say, well, which parts of myself are appropriate to bring to this situation?
All right. That is very sound advice. Thank you, Paul. How can people learn more about you?
The best place to look me up is autism-from-the-inside.com.au. So there's also the YouTube channel, Autism From The Inside, which is easy to find. But in terms of resources and links to the emotional intelligence course and this upcoming online summit and our monthly webinars and things like that, autism-from-the-inside.com.au.
Perfect. All right, Paul, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I think this is going to be a really, really valuable episode for people who want to learn more about how they can manage their own emotions and relate to people in the world.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks for tuning in to Autism Knows No Borders. As Paul mentioned, recognizing your own emotions as they arise can help you manage conflict and increase your ability to read other people's emotions. If you're autistic, how do you use emotional intelligence? Share your story over in our online Global Autism community. And if you're a family member or professional, you're also welcome. Our Global Autism community is a safe space where you can hear directly from autistic individuals and become a better ally. Whatever your role related to autism is, you can join our online Global Autism community to collaborate with people all over the world. Sign up today at community.globalautismproject.org. Let's work together to transform how the world relates to autism. Thanks for listening. Take care.